Well, hello, listener. This episode of Romance Writers Therapy is brought to you by Simply Spellbound Edits. Kate and I have both worked with Heather at Simply Spellbound Edits on multiple manuscripts, and we continue to do so. So if you are looking for an editor, we definitely suggest taking a look at Heather. You can reach her at heather@SimplySpellBoundEdits.com. You can check out her website at SimplySpellBoundEdits.com. Or you can find her on Instagram, which is the way I talk to her the most. So, listener, happy editing, happy writing, and we're on with the show.
All right, and we're all recording?
Yep, I'm recording.
All right, fantastic.
Oh, it's me? Are you recording? I'm recording.
You did do it. You did do it last time.
Did I?
So I was like, you know what?
So listener, you are at Romance Writers Therapy, and Kate and I are joined by our editor, Heather, at SpellboundEdits. And hi, Heather.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Hi, Heather.
I'm fantastic. I'm excited to be here. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, life is good. What about you, Kate? How are you?
Doing good.
I feel like I'm throwing like a hot potato around. Well, Heather is here to talk to us about edits. So Heather, do you want to tell listener about how you started doing editing and like what brought you down this road?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, I was always obsessed with books, and I desperately wanted to somehow make a living with books, but I didn't know what that was. And so eventually I just decided to become a teacher, because then I thought at least I could, make kids fall in love with reading, which I did. I had teachers always laughed at my library in my classroom because it was expansive.
That's awesome.
But it was great. But then teaching itself, I kind of thought I'd just get to like read books all day, and obviously that's not what happens in a classroom.
Well, and what age group did you teach?
Oh, I taught second grade.
Oh, that's young.
For the longest.
Okay.
I kind of bounced around between second. Well, I taught 1 year of first grade, which was not for me. And all the way up to fifth. I bounced around a little bit, but mostly I was in second grade.
Is the difference from first and second graders really that big?
It's huge.
It's wild.
Behavior?
I mean,
Yes.
as somebody who like had a daughter in first grade last year and who is now in second grade this year, it is insane the difference. Like,
oh yeah, no.
they aged so much over the summer.
Yeah,
It's
they do.
wild. Yeah.
And if you think about the beginning of the year, like a first graders in the beginning of the year is really still just like a kindergartner.
Yeah, it's like a kindergartner
and a second
plus.
grader is yeah, exactly. So there's a little transition, but yeah, second grade is a huge difference from first grade. When I taught first grade, kids cried like every day, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing to make you cry. Like I told one kid he needed to tie his shoes, and he started crying, and I was like, oh, okay.
Just the last straw.
Oh, poor
Yeah.
baby.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
After this
I'm
long
the same.
day. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I had like an anecdote, but like really it takes us off the beaten trail, and I don't know if listener really cares. But go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, while I was teaching, I kind of started racking my brain about what I could do different, because I knew, even though I really enjoyed teaching, it was really draining, and I knew it wasn't the thing I wanted to do forever. And I honestly don't even remember how I stumbled upon editing, but it was just sort of like this pipe dream that I had for, probably a few years. And then a couple years ago, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do a class. Like, let's commit to this, and I can teach. And then, over the summer, do a lot of editing and after school kind of thing. And so it started out just very part-time. And then last year, I had a really rough teaching year. And then at the very end of the year, they told me they were going to move me from second grade to transitional kindergarten.
Oh,
And
no.
I was like, first grade was too young for me. I was not down to teach 4-year-olds.
No.
Um,
Oh my
No.
gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I just decided to take the leap, and I made editing my full time. And I go back and sub every once in a while just to like get a little dose of the kids and see my people. But for
That's
the most part, I'm
awesome.
just editing.
Yay.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
That is awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been wonderful so far. I'm loving it. So
Kate and I really appreciate you, so we're happy you're here.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're doing the editing
Yeah.
full time because it means I get to bombard you with like requests to edit.
Yeah, exactly.
yes, please
Whenever
do.
you have a calendar. I'm trying to like be mindful of your calendar. Literally all of this like past month, and the reason I didn't end up asking you is because I didn't have a finished draft until like the day before this thing was due. So, but I kept thinking to myself, is a week too little time? Yeah, no, that's bad. Don't ask her. But then it would become like, is 6 days too little to ask Heather if she's got time on her schedule?
Oh my gosh.
No, that's even worse. Stop.
Oh my gosh, you're so funny.
I had like the same experience though with Accidentally Under Your Tree, where I was like, no, she doesn't have time to do a dev edit. You'll just have to figure it out. It'll be fine. And then we were like chatting because, spoiler alert, listener, we had this conversation. We're doing it again for you. But,
Yep.
so like we were chatting and I was like, well, she's right here. I'm just going to say it. and so that's how you ended up doing the dev edits for, manuscript evaluation for Accidentally Under Your Tree. But yeah, listener, there was a sound issue, so we're re-recording. So you have a schedule.
Yeah, I'm so happy you did that. I do have a schedule. I'm actually booked all the way through January.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm pretty booked right now.
Are you feeling, because like we have talked before and your schedule had kind of gotten out of hand. Do you feel like you're good through January, or do you feel like it might get a little tight?
No, I was really, I was kind of intentional, and I know that I made a post about it really recently that I'm really terrible at saying no. And so when I say I'm booked, it's like I've got a little wiggle room for myself in case someone comes up to me and is like, oh my gosh, I'm in a crisis. Because that happened to me in August or July or August. I can't quite remember. But an author came up to me and said, my editor just backed out at the last minute and I'm panicking. My book comes out in like a month. Can you help me?
Oh my god.
And I was like, I can't let your book be published not edited. Yes, I'll do it. And so then that month was really stressful.
Yeah.
Do you have a rush fee that you put on things like that?
You know, I didn't. I think just because I'm starting out, that would have been a great idea.
Yeah,
but no, I
definitely
didn't
do
do
that.
that.
Yeah.
I definitely learned a lot from that situation. I worked a lot of long hours that month, but it worked out. Her book's amazing. It's been received really well. So because of that, I kind of have left myself wiggle room where it's like, if this is all I do for this month, great. I'm going to have an easy month, but like, you know, I'll be able to pay my bills. And then if someone comes up to me in a crisis, I can fit them in.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a good plan.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a bit about like your services and how people can find an editor?
Yeah, absolutely. So I offer kind of a wide range of services. I don't offer developmental edits yet, although I am looking into a course to get certified for that. But currently I offer manuscript evaluations, which are kind of like a light developmental edit. So a developmental edit would take your manuscript, read it really thoroughly, identify your strengths, and then also kind of your room to grow. And manuscript evaluations do the same thing. The difference is that a developmental edit is really detailed and will tell you how to fix whatever issues you're having. Whereas a manuscript evaluation, I'm going to do those same things, but I'm not necessarily going to tell you how to fix it. I haven't been trained in that. I don't, I know what makes a good story and I enjoy story, but I don't have all the technical jargon of it. So I will tell you like, oh, it seems like you rushed through this. Maybe consider bulking it up a little bit, or like, trust your reader to understand this. We don't need this detail in here. Kind of those things, but otherwise, I'm not going to be nearly as specific as a developmental editor. Okay. Then I offer line editing, which is really my favorite. That's where you send me your manuscript and I go through it, kind of looking for redundancies, areas where you've repeated yourself, or areas where you're kind of skimming through and help you add a little bit more detail to it. It's really focused on the beauty of the language. So looking for spots where we can make the sentences flow a little better, or make them a little prettier, or trim them down a little if they're, a little too flowery. Then I offer copy editing, which is just like your basic editing, like just making sure that the grammar is correct, the punctuation is correct, spelling is correct, all of those types of things. And then the final one I offer is proofreading, which is just making sure, like you've already been to a professional editor, and just making sure that there's no lingering errors.
Yeah, it's the very last stage.
Yes, like you're ready for publication if you're getting it proofread.
I wanted to touch on, because you mentioned a little bit ago, having to take a course to get certified in certain areas. And obviously not every editor does get certified, but like having that proof that you know what you're about,
right?
Like you know the material, because it's so easy to think that, for just all of us, like to think we know what we're doing and then just not. Literally, like, sorry, I gotta launch into a little anecdote before I get to my question. The little last minute draft story, I put it in the group chat for our critique group, and all my wonderful friends in this group looked at it, but I found it so funny that like I would get some people adding a comma here, and then someone would remove that exact same comma,
so
and then someone would be like we could not agree on the commas.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Straight up, like no one knows what we're doing here with the commas.
That is so funny.
Yes.
And it's like, it's so nice to have like someone who knows what they're talking about, for real. Like for real.
Well, and
it's like I know we all think we do.
I think also just like being able to say like, this is the Chicago Manual Style Guide, right? Like that, like,
yes, being able to point to
exactly. This is why it's credible. This is why I'm following it, sort of thing. Yeah,
right.
So I wanted to invite you to talk about the certifications that you do have, and like what going through that process was like, and when people are looking for an editor, how to kind of ask them questions about that to, get a feel for like what their qualifications are.
Absolutely. I think that's so important, because obviously you're trusting your manuscript to this person, and you're paying like not a small sum of money to someone to make sure that your story is ready for the public eye. And yeah, when I first started editing, I really didn't think that I would need much education, or well, not when I started editing, when I started looking into editing. I thought, I'm a teacher. I know grammar and I know punctuation. I'm fine. Like there's not going to be much I need to know. That is not the case at all. There's so many little nuances, and commas are a great example. When you're in elementary school, and I know because I was taught to teach kids this, you tell them when you hear a pause in your brain, put a comma. But
oh my god, that's literally what I
do. Yeah, me too. And that is so not the case. It was a long time ago now. I'm sure it's totally buried, but I did this whole series on Instagram about commas and how to know when you need one, because it is such a common thing that authors struggle with. So yeah, it's super important to make sure you hire a qualified editor. When I was first considering editing, I decided to do this little course through Pointer Aces. And it was like $100. It was a self-paced course, just kind of an introduction to editing. And it was great because it showed me that I did want to be an editor, but it was also totally geared towards editing journalism.
I just saw your reel about this on Instagram today. Yeah.
Yeah. I was having a little deja vu while I was talking. So the Pointer Aces journalism course is super interesting, but they don't even use the Chicago Manual of Style for journalism. So it is not applicable, and it's all about, like fact checking and, how the dialogue was useful, but otherwise I don't use very much of that information. But it is a certificate I hold. I guess if I ever wanted to go work for a newspaper, I could. But I took that and then really quickly realized that I did want to edit, but that was not going to be a sufficient course for me. So I did a bunch of research. There's so many different certificates of editing, and it's really not a requirement, although I really think it should be. If you're charging authors a significant amount of money, you should be certified, in my opinion.
That's fair. Yeah.
So I went to UC San Diego. They have a extension program that's really great, all online. And I took I think it was a 2-year certificate program for editing. And it was wonderful. The first class was the hardest class I've ever taken in my life. And I really thought it was going to be the easiest because it was just focused on grammar. And that's when I learned that I didn't really know when to use commas.
That's wild.
Because it was eye-opening. And the course literally just had it would assign sections of the Chicago Manual of Style to read. It's not the most fun reading in the world, but it is nice to be really familiar with it. I know where to look for different questions, and I kind of have an idea in my head now. I've been doing it long enough. I have an idea in my head of what's expected, but then I can go double check. In editing, there's different levels of editing, right? Like, so proofreading is a really light edit, and then copy editing would be a medium one, and line edit would be a heavy edit. And so each of those were their own course I had to take to learn what types of things you look for in that type of editing. The last part of your question, I think, was what to look for in an editor.
Kind of had to check that they're qualified.
Right.
Because, I remember at the start of my writing kind of author journey, I did not really know how to look for an editor. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of, the main thing I think that kind of took up my vision was, how do you look for, standard prices? What's the standard price per word? It's right. A fraction of a cent.
Yes.
But, it obviously adds up very quickly if you have 80,000 words.
It really does. It really does. So when you're looking for editors, there are a couple places that you can look. Most of my clients come from Instagram, honestly. But you can go to, there's a union for editors that's called ACES, and there's another one that's the EFA, Editorial Freelancers Association. And both of those have listings of editors that you can click through and, start a conversation with them.
That's wild, because this is the first time I've heard of either of those associations. And I remember when I was looking for an editor for the first time, I hit up a Facebook group and stuff like that. I was like, how do I find someone? And then just followed their recommendations. Mm-hmm. And that's how I found my first couple editors, was through asking them their prices and if they do 1,000-word sample. And finding them that way. I didn't know about any of the other any of the two programs that you just mentioned.
Yeah, and there's more. Those are just the ones that I'm a part of, so they're the ones that I know. But I know San Diego has its own editing union that it has a website for. I only know that because the school I happened to go through was San Diego. But there's tons of different unions that have all of these things. I'm also part of the freelance editors club, which is another place that you could go look for editors. But really the key is just making sure you have a conversation with them first before you send them a bunch of money or commit to sending them a bunch of money. You mentioned a sample edit. That is so critical because first of all, it's good for both the author and the editor because it shows you how the editor edits, and you can decide if you like their style, because obviously we all have our own style of things. So it's really useful to the author for that, and to kind of gauge whether it seems like they understand your story. I had a client one time tell me that she had an editor who just totally didn't understand like her character's motivation, and they kept suggesting different things to change, but then it would have completely changed her character. So it's important to see that. But then also on the editor's side, you can kind of gauge, does this need what they're actually requesting? Does it need a heavier edit than what they're asking, or maybe even a lighter edit than what they're asking for? Or do I enjoy this story? I think it would be really tough to work on something that you weren't interested in.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. But while you're setting up the sample edit, you can ask, I've only ever had one client ask me, but I do think it's a good question, is, are you certified? Where are your certifications from? And if they say, Pointer Aces, I might consider, looking really closely at the sample edit and making sure that you're on board with with what they did, because they might have. Pointer Aces has a ton of different programs, and they're where I'm planning on doing the developmental edit program through. Or no, sorry, that's the EFA. But they do have many different courses, and they're all great for what they do, but that doesn't mean that it's for a fiction manuscript or a memoir or whatever it is that you're specifically having edited. So yeah, I just think it's not to be shy about asking questions, and then even potentially doing a little research yourself to see.
I like that. Yeah, especially like there was one editor that I sent like a sample to, and they got back with me and they're like, you want to show and not tell. And I'm like, I understand. Like, and like Kate and I have talked about this before too. So listener might already know that like I complain about this, but like, it's like the worst advice as a blanket advice, right?
Right.
Because like
yes.
it was great for me because I was like, you clearly do not see my voice, right? Like,
right.
You have to tell as well. Like all these things work together.
Absolutely.
And it was definitely like, okay, you and me were not a fit. And so,
right.
With that sample, I was able to know that and change the direction I went. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my giant pet peeves as an editor, is there are editors out there who take a nugget of wisdom, which, yes, you do want your story to have a lot of show in it. Otherwise, it can get really dry. But then they just want that to be a unilateral decision, instead of realizing that there are times when you want to speed up the pace, and so you do want to tell, or it's not super crucial. It's just something you're going to drop in there. So yeah, you can tell that. The other one that always gets me is adverbs. There are editors who will just
hate that
yes,
adverb.
and they will delete every single adverb in your story, and that's not okay. Moderation is key. That's my whole motto for editing.
Well,
just
and again,
everything in moderation.
If you were to delete every single one of my adverbs, like, you have significantly changed my voice, and that is the thing that is uniquely me about my writing. Like,
yes,
you can give the same exact plot to another author, but I'm the only one that's going to tell it the way I tell it because of my voice. And so,
that's so important.
Yeah, it's important to have an editor that is going to work with your skills and understand what you're doing.
Absolutely. And that's something I forgot to mention with line editing, that if you're getting line edits, that's the time where it's most likely to impact your voice, because obviously you and I have totally different voices. If I see a sentence and I'm like, oh, this would be so beautiful if she said it this way, then I'm not doing my job, right? Like, because you said it your way. I work really hard to make sure that I'm taking what you said and refining it, but to where it still sounds like you. And there are definitely people out there who, you know, there's a little bit of ego and they're like, oh, this is a much better way to say this. And they'll just completely change your voice. So it's really important if you're getting a line edit to make sure when that sample edit comes back to you, it still sounds like you wrote it.
It's important, like as an author, to be able to identify the moments where you are taking the advice and where you are like standing on what you want it to do.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. You know, because you're coming to someone because you're saying, I don't have the skills that I need to make this the way that I want to. That's why I'm coming to someone else,
right?
You know, to like tell me what to do. And when you're in such a tell me what to do kind of state, you're like, it feels like you should just take any and all advice, and it's so hard to like do the filtering of like, well, is this really aligning with what I want to say,
right?
Like with how I want to express this.
Absolutely.
And we had a conversation at one point where I think I sent you a screen cap of an edit you made. And you went, oh no, that's so, like, I phrased that so rude.
Oh,
was it the one word answer?
I just said revise.
That's hilarious.
It was just revise. And then you were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said revise. And I went, this is how I edit. This is how I
know, right?
It's not rude.
I know. Omit is all over.
But like
I've started to add a maybe omit.
I went back to... I just to soften it.
Soften it.
The notes I write to myself are just horrific. Like, forget this bitch. Like they're very mean. There's a lot of question marks.
Oh
There's
my
a very
gosh.
It's so spur of the moment. But like, it brought me back to this like either Twitter or Threads posts where there was someone was like posting like some comments that their editor had made, and like the whole just the cut this, omit this, rephrase, like in that very curt like just chop thing.
Yeah.
And going back to that, like what it really means to like try to understand what you're doing and why something is here. Like, you sometimes comment things on my documents that say, like, what are you trying to do here? Like, what is the purpose of this statement? Like, not in a rude way, like, what are you doing here? What are we trying to accomplish with this sentence? Will it work somewhere better somewhere else? Or do we need to refine the purpose of it? Like, it's all in that area.
Right. And I always try to, because I'm an especially sensitive person. So, and also I think probably it comes back to teaching, right? Like I had these little 7 and 8-year-olds. I didn't want to crush their souls. And so that's just kind of who I am as a person. But all of my comments, if I'm changing something, I try to explain why I'm changing it. Or if there are multiple ways I think something could be, like if it's just wrong, like grammatically wrong. I get lots of, like dangling modifiers or word or comma splices. So if I'm coming up with a way to fix it and there's, in my head several different ways, I'll leave a comment and say, this is wrong because, it's a dangling modifier or whatever. Here are some ways that you could change it. And then I just because it's at the end of the day, it's your story. You're the one that needs to be happy with it, not me. And I always try to, even in the manuscript evaluation I'm working on right now, I say at the very beginning, just a reminder, this is really subjective. So if I suggest something and you don't like it, great, ignore it. You're not going to hurt my feelings. It's your story. So you need to be happy with it. It's just one opinion.
When I beta, particularly outside of like a rom-com genre, when I make those big suggestions, I tend to put like, check with other readers, or like, if you know that this is like true to your genre, like disregard my comment sort of thing. But I do think it's still important to like have those comments, Because either
Yes.
it helps you understand why you're choosing the thing that you chose, like why you're choosing to stay with your initial thought. It makes you defend your opinion, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really important position to put yourself in.
Absolutely. I talk, usually stories are coming to me right after betas. So I talk to a lot of authors who are in the beta stage, and I always tell them, if you get one bad comment from a beta about a scene, that doesn't mean that scene's bad. It means it wasn't that person's cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
If you get 5 or 6 comments that are negative about the same scene, okay, maybe that scene needs to be reworked.
Yeah.
But it's always, everything is so subjective, unless you're copy editing, which is pretty cut and dry. It's either right or it's wrong. Except even then there's a little bit of subjectivity because it's still fiction. So like dialogue is allowed to be wrong, or you can write a fragment for emphasis. But especially with beta reading, like it's all just different people's opinions, and we don't all like the same things. But it is important, I think, to a beta reader who only leaves positive feedback isn't necessarily very useful to you. It tells you what they love, but it doesn't tell you what needs to be improved.
Well, and I think that there's benefits to that also because, we all need like encouragement.
Oh gosh.
But you can't only be seeking out positive affirmation, right? Like you have to also be
absolutely.
If you know this person is just going to be your cheerleader and they're always going to say the things that they loved, awesome. But if you don't, you can't just rely on that.
Right. Because there's no growth in that.
Yeah.
And I do always, that is another thing that I'm really firm on. I always make sure that I leave positive comments. If I love something, you're going to know it, because then when you get to those things where I'm constructively critical, it's easier to take that because all the good things in your story. It's easier to fix the one thing that, needs a little work.
Yeah, like you're not being bullied. Like
right.
Like you are on a team. Yeah, you messaged me a couple of things. And that was really helpful because then I could be like, okay, it's okay. It's okay. like my poor brain is just like in a highly critical mode right now. Like that's one of the things about editing in general is like, you just become very highly critical of everything. And so it's easier to see the flaws than it is to see its benefits.
Absolutely. And that's why I always make sure, like, that's one of the reasons I really love finding clients on Instagram, because it's so easy to communicate. But yeah, when I find something that I super love in your story, I have to share it because it made me happy. So it'll probably make you happy too.
Yes, it definitely does.
Yeah. And it's also like, it's so good to know like what to keep. I think people, when you get into that really critical mindset, like when you're trying to self-edit your work a little bit, before you turn it in, you're kind of like ready to throw out any good idea you had already before.
Right.
It's like everything looks bad. Anything can go. And it's so hard to like see the value in your good ideas.
Oh, absolutely.
At that point. Being reminded not to chuck something out is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've talked about this before on the pod, but in the Office, you were going to get rid of a whole scene that I was like, no, the scene is necessary. It must stay. Do not touch it. And like, sometimes you just need that other person to like take your hand off the delete button.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my.
I get delete button crazy.
The amount of times I've told authors, do not throw this away. Like they're full, like the whole manuscript. This whole thing is trash. I just need to start over. And I'm like, no. Step away from the lighter. Don't burn this.
Step away from the lighter.
The whole house must come down. It is light upon us.
Right? No, the burn down the house is such a real emotion.
It really is.
Like, I don't think we address this enough in life. Dude,
like for realsies though.
Burn it all.
Well, yeah, I imagine you're staring at it for so long. Yeah, it gets hard to see the good or the surprising and funny things that aren't surprising or funny to you because you know it's coming and you've looked at it so much it stops being funny.
Yeah. I'm going to throw Kate under the bus again.
Oh, absolutely.
We were talking about one of your manuscripts and you were in like the later stages of editing and you were like, I think I forgot to make this funny. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we laugh out loud to this story all of the time. It's so funny. And like, you had just like gotten into like this place where like you couldn't experience it the way any other way than like through your own lens as the writer. And
I've already written this and it's already bad.
Exactly. Well, and like I'm feeling the same way about like Accidentally Under Your Tree, where like, you know, it's not as funny at the end as it was in the beginning, which is like, that's pretty normal. Like when I think about other books that have made me laugh out loud, it tends to happen in the first half, right? Because in the second half, you're fixing all the problems you created, right? So the tension's up. It's a different kind of tension. And
there are still funny parts in that end, I have to say. You'll
really
see when it comes
that.
back to you.
Okay,
There's
good.
lots of LOLs written in for every time I laughed out loud.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, thank you.
We just keep inviting
just to be nice to us.
To validate us, and then trash the audio, and then we...
Oh no, Heather, it happened again.
Oh no.
Oh God.
No one's ever going to hear the podcast.
I'll never assume
Yeah.
She's like, I feel like I've done this 8 times now. Can you guys just post whatever you have?
No, we cannot. You must do another conversation with us. Tell us how wonderful we are. Thank you.
Again.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just
again.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like trying to think of like fun questions to ask. Like, I don't want to make you like rag on like nightmare situations.
I know. I don't like. I know you don't have like a HIPAA or an NDA kind of thing happening, but it feels rude to be like, "What's the worst thing?"
Exactly.
You know. I don't want to like make you like hash out some.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm always really careful with that. Like, I don't ever name names.
And that's good. You
because,
shouldn't.
Yeah.
You really shouldn't.
No, it's trust.
It is a lot of trust. Was there a book that you were ever able to like edit and the transformation was like incredible, right? Like really like from the editing stage to like the publication. Mm-hmm. Do you ever read them after they publish?
I haven't really. I edited Vessellus by Courtney Wynn, and I was a part of her reveal team, and so I read the ebook afterwards. That was more to make sure because she had a crazy situation. So that was I edited probably faster than I edited that so fast. So then I really was just reading through to make sure that I hadn't missed a whole bunch of horrible things. I mean, it was in great shape when it came to me. It's not like it was in bad shape, but you know, I was worried about typos. So I read through that one, but most of them I end up proofreading also. So that is kind of the final form. So I read them that way, and then I buy them all and they come to me and I put them on this one shelf I have that is just all books I've edited. I call it my shelf of pride, and then it's in my living room, and every once in a while I just look up there and I'm just like, oh,
that's so cute.
All my little babies.
You should share that on Instagram. I want to see it.
Okay, I will. I have I just got mated to my ex, so I need to put that up on the shelf. I have actually Vessellus and a couple others just arrived, so they all need to get put up on the shelf. So yeah, I will.
Do you organize them chronologically or alphabetical?
Well, I have in my house, it's a really old house, and so I have 12 or 14-foot ceilings.
Gorgeous.
And it's amazing. But the bookshelf, my husband and I built it to look like a built-in bookshelf, and it's the top shelf, so he has to put them up there. If it were me, it would be up there chronologically, but since he's doing it, it's just kind of what like where there's an open spot, he
That's
just sets it
amazing.
up there.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
It must be so great to watch
just
it grow.
His whim.
Yeah, no, it's so fun. When it looked a little silly when I first started doing it because I only had probably 2 or 3 books, so they were just up there on this totally empty shelf by themselves, and it looked silly. But now it's getting a lot more full, so
Yay.
it's fun to just look up there. But you asked about biggest transformation. I actually think it's probably mated to my ex, because there was such a huge difference between when it came to me the first time and then I sent it back to you and then it came to me the second time. And it was just so fun to watch that evolution. And not that it was in, terrible shape when it came to me, but you just like added some things in that cleared it up a little bit, and I don't know. It just felt so much more polished the second time. I was kind of like, what am I even doing here?
Aw. Yeah, Kate's so good at like having an eye on like the overall picture and like figuring out where the holes are in the foundation. Like that's something that I've always been really impressed with by her.
Absolutely.
Aw, I'm glad you say that, because that's like my big fear of like not being able to make it a full, complete story that feels cohesive. I always feel like we keep talking about this where we keep calling it the cart before the horse, and I don't think we're actually talking about the same thing when we do talk about this.
I don't think we are.
But it keeps coming back up. No, we're absolutely.
You have a different idea.
Like, we're just. But like in the way that communication is imperfect, we're just gonna keep doing this. Where was I going with this? God damn it.
Your fear that you aren't able to see what the story needs and fix it.
Yeah, like you write a whole story, and when you start at the beginning, you don't have the whole book, obviously. This is how it works. Like there's no you have nothing. And you kind of feel like you have to know everything about the book, but then you have to do the discovery process. You have to like fill in all the blanks. You have to like make it like you're building it brick by brick, and you kind of don't know what shape this house is gonna like turn into when you're done with it. You just kind of have a vague like, I want a tower, I want a bathroom, I want a kitchen. Like your priorities are all over.
And then
the
you
place.
end up building
like,
a bungalow. Like the plan
right?
never
You, like,
is the
step
same
back
as the
and you're like,
execution.
does this make sense? And then you kind of go, all right, if I just put a hallway here, it'll all work, right? And it sounds insane, but like then you're like, all right. And then by the end of it, you go, does it look like I intended to do anything that I did? That it was going to come out like this?
Oh my gosh.
Like,
that's so funny, because I think I remember, I can't remember if it was Gargoyle from General Management or if it was Mated to my ex, but one of them, I left a comment like, oh my gosh, this is such great foreshadowing, and you were like, I don't even remember putting that in there. Like, it was just
on brand.
That's the truest thing I've ever heard. Oh, what a mood.
Literally, you point out, it's like, news to me.
I had this
the thing that I love most about letting something, or not working on a manuscript for a little bit, is getting to forget everything that's gone into it. Because then you do get a little bit of that, oh, this is nice back. Like, oh, look, that's so cute there. Oh, the surprise, the novelty.
Well, and I think also when you're like in the hard spot of writing it, it can feel really like mentally draining. And so you can't really like read that part objectively until you've taken some time away from it. And then as you're reading, like, oh, these sentences aren't nearly as stilted as they felt to write. Right?
I believe it. Even with editing, like once I go through one pass, I have to, for totally different reasons, but I have to take a day or maybe 2 away from the story, so that when I'm re-going through it, it's newer, so that I can I'm more likely to catch any mistakes I missed the first time, for one thing. But also, it's just like I get a better sense of what it sounds like on the second pass if I take a little break in between.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Well, at that point, you know where everything, like, you know the shape of the story. You can see, like, you know how it's supposed to end, so it's easier to be able to point out things that are like, well, this helps build towards that ending, or this here detracts from your ending or your message or your theme or whatever it is.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's like one of those things that, like, I don't want to call it an editing, not ick, but like pet peeve. When, not even an editing thing, like just a feedback kind of response thing. When someone like highlights something and goes, "Where's this going?" And I'm like, if you read 2 paragraphs ahead, you get it. Like, just hold your. There was a contest. I submitted a few chapters of a book to, and someone highlighted something and was like, "She's so immature," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's the book. She matures by the end."
Yeah, it's like, character growth, actually.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
And someone making you feel like something intentional you did is a mistake is like it's such a trigger.
Oh my gosh,
for me.
isn't that frustrating?
So, like,
yeah.
It's so, because it's like, I just want to tell you, like, no,
Right.
you're wrong. You're categorically wrong.
Well,
but you can't do that with feedback. You have to be like, no.
Yeah,
I'm going to ignore that little piece.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will take this into consideration.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, with manuscript evaluations, I always have to read it at least twice, but usually I end up doing 3 passes through it because the first time I don't know where that story is going. So yeah, I leave comments. The first pass is almost only positive comments because I'm just taking in the story. And then when I go back through, I can sort of see, oh, this doesn't really make sense here because it doesn't go anywhere, or oh, this was building up towards this other thing. But yeah, you have to take at least one pass through to know where the story is going first.
Mm-hmm.
I had a thought.
Oh no.
Oh no. Oh no. The number of times you told me that you read Made It to My Ex, I kind of, every time you told me, okay, I'm going to read it again, like, I had a moment like, God, again? I feel tortured for you. Like, why would you do that?
Like, it's so funny. I mean, yeah.
Like, I'm trying to, like, hold back from stopping you. I'm like, no, that's the job. That's the point of this. Like, but she's reading it again.
Yes, yeah. I mean, and that's
so many times.
That's why I don't generally read them after they come to me. It's just in actual book form.
Yeah.
It's because I've already read it. Like, yeah, I think Made It to My Ex I read 4 or 5 times.
And if you never read it again, it'll be too soon.
No, because I love them so much.
They're so great.
It showed up. Yes, the book showed up, and just like the cover made me smile because I just love those 2 doofs so much. But yeah, some of the longer books I end up reading more because it's, you know, it's easier to miss details or forget details. I edited Ink of Copper, and which is coming out in a week or something. And it's like a 700-page book, and I think I've read that book about 8 times.
Oh, wow.
And I did many different editing passes on it. Like she hired me for several different things, but yeah, it was. Luckily, I love the book, so it's wonderful to read through it a bunch of times. But yeah, it was probably 7 or 8 times I had to read through it to make sure everything was good.
I'm always so, like, impressed might be the word, or like almost like a no, please no sort of feeling when I hear about like some of the word counts that like particularly like epic fantasy or like stuff like that has in their stories, because like, I mean, my books tend to be like 50 to 65,000 words, right?
Right.
And that's such a more manageable, like it's just such a more manageable amount. So the idea of like having to not only write, you know, 150,000 word book, but then have to go through and edit it. I mean, that's impressive. It really is.
Oh, yeah. And Inco Copper, I think, is 250,000
my
words,
gosh,
somewhere
that's
around
so
there.
much.
But it's an epic fantasy romance.
Yeah.
She has to build the whole world. So
And like,
yeah,
I
it
love
takes
reading
more
them.
words. Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't know if I could.
The process is so much more involved, though, I think.
Yeah.
Just like the keeping track of all the different things, which, not that it's not involved with a 50,000 word rom-com, you still have to keep track of your characters and their motivations and everything. But
it is
yeah,
a different scale. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, because like not only like keeping track of all the things, but making sure that like the tension is building page to page. Yeah, it's a lot.
Absolutely.
That's impressive. That's a beast right there.
It is. And she had a lot of editors tell her she should cut it, but that's another soapbox I like to get up on, is a book needs to be as long as it needs to be, and if it's not full of fluff, then you don't need to cut it to make it shorter.
There was this, it was actually traditionally published, and it was like 2015 or something like that. You know, traditional publishing's really big on particular word counts.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this woman's debut novel, and of course I can't remember the book or the author, and I'm so sorry, guys. What a terrible story. But it was only 50,000 words, and she was able to not only get an agent but get it published, and like it was exactly how big the book needed to be to tell the story,
right?
And to like change that just because of what, you know, just because like the publisher thinks that that's how big readers want their books to be. Like, how much of that is true, and how much of that is because you have pushed this envelope, right? Like, this agenda, not envelope. But anyway, moving on. Yeah. Anyway, a book should be like what it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Not every book needs to be like a Brandon Sanderson level length book.
Yeah.
But not every book can be only 40 or 50,000 words.
Yeah. So, is there anything else you want to share with listener?
Oh gosh. I don't
do you
know.
love that?
I kind of feel like yeah. I don't know.
Can I share like one final thought?
Yeah.
I'm glad you don't always reread a book once it's finally published, because I have this little in my head, like, you know, you can go, like, when you send the manuscript back to me, sometimes I'm like, if I reject this comment,
that's hilarious.
Is she gonna come back and circle it again and be like, no, again?
I always worry about that. Like, if I send it to you and then it comes back to me and there's something that I, like you said, suggest and then you reject it, I'm always worried that I'm going to find that same thing and suggest it again. Not for me. Like, if you don't like that edit, great, reject it. It's no skin off my back. But just because, like, I don't want to annoy you. Like, by being like, no, this should have a comma here. And you're like, no, I don't want a comma. And then I put a comma back, like, gosh, Heather, I didn't want that comma there.
That's hilarious.
I said no to the comma.
Which is a really terrible example, because commas people usually just trust me on.
I was going to say, I just accept all on everything grammar. Like, let's be real. Let's know my strengths here. So, but yeah, so we're kind of getting to the point where we're coming down. And so if there's any thing that you want, I'm sorry, listener, I am the most jilted speaker right now. But if there's anything that you want to share, or any further, like any thought that you wanted to expand on or anything like that.
I don't really have anything. I kind of feel like we covered it. I would just emphasize, when you're hiring an editor, make sure that you have like actual conversations with them. And I think I forgot to say this, and I don't really know how I did, because it's my whole thing, but make sure that like the vibes are right. Like, you get along with them and enjoy talking to them. Like, it would be a lot harder. Well, probably not your both of your work, because I really enjoy it, but it would be generally a lot harder to work on a novel with someone who I didn't enjoy talking to. And the same goes for the author. Like, if you don't enjoy
fair.
talking to me, it's going to be really difficult to talk about your book.
Yeah.
So making sure that you enjoy talking to them and that they're qualified to work on your story. Those two things are so important. And also that they give you a sample edit.
I think that might be everything. So where can they find you, Heather? Where do you want them to find you?
Kate, are you giving a piece of writing advice? Or are you just like...
Oh, do I have to do that?
I mean, that is the arrangement you made. I'm sorry.
Don't. Okay. My writing advice is don't think you know what you're supposed to do with commas. You don't.
My writing advice... stick to your guns about your voice, but also receive critiques. So find that balance. Okay, now Heather, where can they find you? What was that?
Okay, perfect.
Only if you
am
want
I supposed to be giving writing advice too? I don't know. Just write for you and be like trust what you want to write. Don't write for like what everyone's reading at the moment. Is my big advice.
I like it.
As far as where people can find me. Huh?
I don't write fast enough for that anyway. So.
Oh. Nobody does. The market changes so quickly.
It does.
You never know. Oh, gosh. I'm on Instagram. That's where I spend most of my time. My handle is SimplySpellBoundEdits. And I kind of have a TikTok with the same name, but I don't really understand TikTok, so sometimes things get posted there, but not very often.
Sweet. And your website or email?
Yes, and I have, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a website, which is SimplySpellBoundEdits.com, and you can email me at Heather@SimplySpellBoundEdits.com. I tried to keep it all the same to make it easy for people.
You did a good job. Kate, where can they find you?
They can find me at by Kate Pryor on Threads, Instagram, supposedly TikTok. I have been posting there more. I think that's it. My website is kate-pryor.com. I'm going to get around to setting up a newsletter freebie, so sign up for that.
Woo.
Yeah, that's it for me.
You can find me at Marty the Author on Instagram and TikTok. Again, I mean, I'm just a part of the group. Like, yeah, I technically have a TikTok. You'll see me sometimes. You can email me at martyv@martyv.com. I don't know why I'm telling you my email. And you can find me at martyv.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter, and you get Hazel and Elijah Don't Get Caught, which is the prequel to Hazel and Elijah Find Out. Also, listener, I threw my pandemic story onto KU because why the hell not, man? So You and Me in Quarantine is now available. Yeah. I think that's it for us, listener. Bye, listener. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.